How's it going, everybody? Happy Wednesday. It's time once again for a video. And I told you last week, and I told you a little earlier in a story, that this is going to be good. Because the mystery and conspiracy that I'm doing is the assassination of JFK, John Kennedy, our former president back in the 60s. This one's quite heavy, so there's a lot of theories. There's a lot of conspiracy theories on what happened to JFK. So I'm obviously not going to get into all of them, but I wrote down the 7 that I thought were probably the most prominent that people think. But before I get into the JFK conspiracy theories, let me just give you a quick update on the Wax Menagerie. I finished chapter 7. It went well. It went just as I thought it was, if not a little bit better. Of course, I'll probably always go back and revise at some point after the book. Chapter 8 will be started soon, maybe tonight. Hoping for it anyway. Gonna keep myself occupied, you know. But yeah, the Wax Menagerie Chapter 7 is done. Chapter 8 will be started. And with that, let's get back to business, shall we? The assassination of JFK. I just told the people over on Periscope via Twitter. And there's a lot of layers to this. So basically, I was not around in 1963. Probably wasn't even a thought, to be honest. But I know the story. You know the story. We all know the story. We all know what happened. If you didn't live it, if you weren't there, you still know what happened. On November 22nd, 1963, President of the United States, John Kennedy, was in his Lincoln Continental, waving to the crowd, when he was shot twice, I believe, in the head, by an assassin, who we know, of course, as Lee Harvey Oswald. Kennedy died. And basically, you know, it shocked the nation. The president died, and people were mortified, freaked out, as they should be. Now, we know that Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy, but some people refuse to or don't want to believe that. Which brings me to my 7 theories. Now, again, this has been for 40 years. I mean, there's so many theories I just looked up before I did this video, and some of them were just a little bit much. So here are the 7 theories, and you know how I'm going to do this. I'm going to read them, and then normally I would give you my thoughts on whether or not I think they're possible or not. Honestly, they could go either way here. They could balance the scales. So I'm just going to talk about it, and I'm probably not going to lean one way or the other, to be honest, because they're just so thick. So I'm going to read them, and then I'll, talk about them. The first one, Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill JFK. The second one, Oswald wasn't the only gunman. Number 3, government cover-up. Number 4, LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, was involved in or had JFK killed. 5, the CIA, Mafia, or KGB were involved. He was killed for the U.S.'s involvement in the Vietnam and or Cold War. And then finally, the Secret Service. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill JFK. That's baloney. I'll just start off with the obvious thing. He was involved. From what we know, from what 40 years ago have told us, JFK was killed by Lee Harvey Oswald. Many people saw him leaving the building of where the first shot came. To suggest that Oswald didn't kill JFK and that somebody else did, I mean, I don't know. Like, I get it. But he was involved. So, and I think he did kill him. Like, I do. Or he was involved. So either his bullet killed him or someone else's bullet didn't. Which would bring me to my second point. But I don't want to get to my second point yet. Some people believe that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill JFK. That just seems like a crazy thought, because there's so much evidence to suggest that he did. Excuse me for a moment. Or not. I can't check. I keep getting notifications on my phone, so. Did Lee Harvey Oswald kill JFK? History tells us that yes, he did. There were people there. He was on, he was going to be indicted on it. This one seems solid to me. To suggest that someone else if someone else did, then how come we never found them? How come no one else came forward or no one else was ever found? Bringing me to my second theory, Oswald wasn't the only gunman. Lots of people believe this theory, to the point where books have been written on it. Because the trajectory of, I'm going to butcher that word, just like I did on Twitter, the trajectory of the second bullet couldn't have possibly come from where Oswald was. Okay, so what are you really suggesting here? Let's say Oswald shot Kennedy, killed him, but then just to be sure, another bullet went from another spot and went into him. So was this just making sure he was dead, or did the second bullet kill him? Do I think that he wasn't the only gunman? I really can't tell you one way or the other. I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's possible, but at the same time I don't think it's possible. Because history has told us, for those that weren't there, weren't alive at the time, that it was Lee Harvey Oswald and nobody else. But history has suggested that there was another gunman. This would also suggest that Oswald had an accomplice or was working with people. Totally possible. Totally possible. But at the same time, I'm not really sure. Number 3, government cover-up. Well, naturally, I mean, if there's a conspiracy theory or a mystery video, right? UFOs, aliens, Area 51. What's one of the possibilities? Government. Now the government cover-up is suggested in two ways. On one hand, it's suggested that the government was involved in some way, shape, or form. Another 3 words that I said a lot on Twitter that I'll probably be saying a lot in here. The government played a part and covered up the assassination. In other words, the government, it wasn't just Lee Harvey Oswald. The government knew that it was a conspiracy, and they covered it up. Or, on the other hand, the government themselves had JFK killed. Either way, both totally possible, but more or less, I think, possible. Because, like I said, all of these are possible, but at the same time they're not possible. But I would say out of all of them, the government cover-up is probably one you can just layer on as fact. How much of the government cover-up, how much of a cover-up was there by the government? If there was, how much of it was there? I think that's the real question. So I think this one, I will give you more probable than not. And those 3 words will also come up again. More probable than not later on. LBJ was involved and had Kennedy killed. Okay, for those who don't know what LBJ stands for, it's Lyndon B. Johnson. And for those who aren't up to par with their presidents, Lyndon B. Johnson was the man who succeeded Kennedy. It's suggested that he was involved and or possibly had Kennedy killed. Is this possible? Yeah, of course it is. Is it also not possible? Yes. I know, I'm just wishy-washy, aren't I? So this theory goes along, I'll say this much. When I first heard about this theory, I thought to myself, I know diddly squat, like most of you, about Lyndon B. Johnson. He was from Texas. Oh, and Kennedy died in Texas. Oh. But that's not the only connection. It suggested that Johnson wanted to be president, obviously. If you want to be president and there's somebody already in front of you, how do you stop him? You have him killed. When I first heard about this theory, I based off me knowing literally nothing about Johnson and thinking, no, that's crazy. But there's little things here and there that kind of suggest that if Johnson didn't have Kennedy killed, he was somehow involved. Like, he knew it was going to happen. I didn't say that over on Twitter, so you guys are getting a first little include exclusive. I think he could have possibly been involved, or maybe he knew about it. Um, Also a couple weird things, aside from the fact that Johnson was from Texas, and that's just so happens to be where Kennedy died. But I had also read and heard that when Jackie Kennedy, John's wife, was moving out of the White House, Lyndon B. Johnson couldn't move her out fast enough. Seems kind of weird, right? Like a real, what a douchey thing to do after, the woman's husband just died, the President of the United States, and you're just kind of like, well, you should probably be packing your bags now, shouldn't you? Like, that's just, like, ugh, like, you get, like, a really weird feeling about that. Again, I know nothing about Lyndon B. Johnson, but, not because he was from Texas, so don't throw that at me. I don't know, I just take a look at, like, if you judge people by your first impressions of them, I take a look at Lyndon B. Johnson in pictures, in videos, and I just don't think he has the capability, intelligence, or caliber to have JFK killed. I think, like, at best, or at worst, and technically, he was involved, like, he knew about it. Like, maybe someone tipped him off, or maybe someone said, like, hey, maybe the president will die today. Might want to keep your eyes peeled. And he just kind of like, oh, what is he talking about? Like, one of those things. So do I think LBJ was involved? Maybe. Maybe not. I definitely don't think he had him killed, though. Like, not himself. Like, he's not like the head of the mafia. He's not one of those guys. And plus, Johnson was kind of like, he had a... Do you ever really read about his... Like, here we are in 2020. Does anyone ever say, like, oh, what a great president Lyndon B. Johnson was? No. He was kind of like every other president. Like, if he's not Washington, Lincoln, Kennedy, or Obama, like, you don't really know that he's president unless you know your presidents. And also, Johnson died a couple years after he was president, and he wasn't reelected, so again, just based off that, to me, I know that's a little to go off of, but to me that just doesn't seem like a guy like that after fact. It just, I don't know. The CIA, Mafia, or KGB were involved. This isn't one big giant thing. This is like all different ones. I just didn't want to, say, oh, the CIA, the Mafia, and do them individually. Cuba's also going to be thrown in there because I just didn't have room to write it. Do I think the CIA is a possibility as to yeah. Do I think the CIA had a part in the assassination of JFK? The CIA is a branch of government, is it not? Definitely a possibility. I don't know the lengths or the connections between the CIA and Kennedy directly. Excuse me. Probably could have read into that, but I mean, God, I probably would have been bored out of my skull looking for juicy evidence, I think it's possible. The CIA is connected to the government. I think this one, again, out of the four, the CIA may or may not most likely have been involved. The Mafia, this one I'll probably go off on a whim here and say no. I've never heard or read about JFK being connected to the mob. I've never heard that. I've heard him being connected to Marilyn Monroe, but I've never heard him being connected to the Mafia. So that one I would probably scratch off my list if you had to give me a choice. The KGB, aka Soviets, which would connect it to the next one about the Cold War. It suggested the KGB didn't want Kennedy or the United States muddling in their affairs, and the KGB, who was sort of prominent back then, maybe sort of, not as much in the 80s, but had a part in his assassination. And also Fidel Castro in Cuba. Again, Cuba was kind of big. Fidel Castro was a bit of an a-hole back in the 60s and quite big on power, if I've read correctly. I know Cuba and the United States did have negotiations and talks throughout the years from the 60s and so forth. I don't know how much of a diabolical madman Fidel Castro was that he could possibly have Kennedy killed. So I can't say one way or the other. I'd like to think no, but again, I just can't tell you definitively yes or no. CIA, probable more than the others. Mafia, no. KGB, maybe. Cuba, meh. Like I said, these are all possible, but at the same time, they're all not possible because it's really all of these theories are so thick with, you know, with evidence and thoughts and opinions that they're just it's really hard to lean one way or the other. He was killed for the U.S.'s involvement in Vietnam and or the Cold War. We all know how bad Vietnam was. If you weren't alive when Vietnam was happening, you read about it, you heard about it from someone, family member or whatever, or you even saw it in a movie, and even then, a fictional depiction told you it was bad. So it suggested that Kennedy wanted to either prevent Vietnam, take people out, or whatever, and he wasn't going to back down. He was pretty much like, you know, I think this is bad. I don't want us to be involved. I don't think it should get any worse or whatever. I think we need to stop it. Maybe the government, Vietnam, whatever, the people who were pulling the strings that weren't him were like, you know what? We don't like the way you're thinking, and we don't like what you're saying. So forth, he gets assassinated. Do I think he got assassinated over Vietnam? Nah. I mean, compared to the others, it just seems like a little bit of a stretch, because there would be so many layers to like prevent a war that you did need to take part in. But at the same time, it was like you don't know what went on behind the scenes. You don't know who he was talking to, who he was trying to negotiate with, who he was trying not to negotiate with. Then we get to the Cold War. Again, KGB, Cold War, Soviets. This one, again, the involvement, again, to prevent a war. It's possible, but at the same time, it's not possible. I know for a fact that he would probably lean more towards trying to stop Vietnam, and people would try to stop him from preventing Vietnam over the Cold War, because, I mean, I feel like Russia would be more, I don't know. I think Vietnam would be more likely to be a possibility of him being assassinated over the Cold War, if that makes sense. The last one, the Secret Service. I'd never heard of this one until I just recently read it before I did the video. It suggests, there's actually two thoughts here. It is suggested that the Secret Service had a part in assassinating JFK, and it's also suggested that the lack of Secret Service on when he got assassinated played a part. I'm leaning towards the second one, but again, let me talk about the first one. So it suggested that the CIA in their two-piece suits and their Men in Black sunglasses got together, however many there are or were, and that they and perhaps other people, Lee Harvey Oswald, other people involved, sat at a table and orchestrated, you know, hey, we're going to assassinate the president. I've never heard that. Like, it just seems they're supposed to protect them. They're supposed to protect this man, and instead they're conspiring to kill him. For what purpose? I'd go even further here to suggest that maybe a couple of Secret Service people, if this is possible, I think a couple of Secret Service guys were like, okay. And how would they do that? Like, I don't think the entire Secret Service was like, yeah, we're going to kill the president. Like, no. If anything, it was a couple of them. And why would they do it? Money. They got paid off. Like, hey, you want to make a couple extra bucks? That's a crazy thought, because they're supposed to be protecting this man, and instead they're like, oh, for a couple $100 more, I'll play a part in having him killed. Like, that's crazy. The second part, though, I think is also, maybe they got paid off to go away. So, think about this for a second. I don't know how many Secret Service people were supposed to be there, but it is suggested that however many Secret Service men Kennedy was supposed to have that day, he didn't. Which is suggested that they were probably, some of them were paid off, hey, go on a vacation, or hey, you look like you could use a coffee break. And the lack of Secret Service is part of the reason that he was assassinated. Do I think this is possible? Again, out of the 7 theories, not the worst one in the world. Definitely possible. Although, again, I've been saying this since I suggested the Secret Service theory. It just seems like a bit of a stretch for these people who are so close to him and see him every day to just turn their backs on him over money. I know money talks, but I mean, I'd like to think loyalty and friendship and keeping your job would matter more, you know? And also, I've never read anything that's to suggest otherwise, that, you know, members of the Secret Service were involved. So there's those 7 theories. Like I said, I think they're possible. At the same time, I don't think they're possible. They're just so thick and heavy. Like, even if you Googled it yourself, you would see all these theories come up, and you'd be like, wow, there's so many layers to them. So I'm going to leave it with this last part. 42 groups, 82 assassins, and 214 people have been accused at one point or another for their involvement in the assassination on JFK. Over the last course of the last 40 to 50 years. That is nuts. So I'm sure some of them are probably like, you know, substantial. Like, okay, that seems legit. Let's look into that. Let's give that evidence to the public. Whereas other ones are probably just absolutely nuts. Because notice I didn't include aliens, because that would just be nuts. I haven't come across that, thank God. I think the government would be the closest to aliens on this front. So again, all 7 theories. Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill JFK? Meh. Oswald wasn't the only gunman? Government cover-up? That's a beard scratcher right there. That one's good. LBJ, aka Lyndon B. Johnson, was involved and or had JFK killed. The CIA, Mafia, KGB, or Fidel Castro in Cuba were involved. He was killed over the U.S.'s involvement in Vietnam and the Cold War, and the Secret Service. So again, those are the basic first 7 that I've seen. There was other little ones, like, I don't know. I can't really think of any other small ones, but there was a lot of dumb ones, or they were very, like, political. Like, more political than normal, than these. And I was just like, I'm not writing those down, because I don't even understand that. But yeah, so what do you think happened? Love to get some feedback. I mean, I told you this was going to be a juicy conspiracy mystery video. I hope I lived up to that promise. Personally, out of all of these, I didn't tell the people on Twitter this. Out of all of these, which one do I think? I think it was just what happened. Lee Harvey Oswald shot him. There's no conspiracy. Although, I should probably mention that in 1979, the Assassins... There's a name for it. The Assassins Committee. There's other words in there. In 1979, the Assassins Committee said that it was more probable than not... Remember I said probable than not was going to come back. That it was more probable than not that there was another gunman, and that it was in fact that the assassination of Kennedy was a conspiracy. They said this in 1979. And then another group came out in 1988 and pretty much presented the exact opposite of evidence. Go figure, right? Well, okay, so it was a conspiracy. In 1979, they concluded that more probable than not, it was a conspiracy. Okay, I wasn't alive in 1979. I just came across that evidence before I did this video, and it's now 2020, and conspiracy theory nuts exist, and I'm talking about it in a video. So yeah, obviously this is one of those things that it's never gonna die, unless, you know, somebody who's still alive comes out of the woodwork and puts it to bed. But knowing most conspiracy theories and mysteries, I highly doubt that. So, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Tomorrow is October 1st, so for the rest of the month, for October, I'm going to be doing horror mysteries. So that should be good. Stay tuned for that. I might do that Friday. Again, not promising. Most of the time I'm kind of bored, so I'm just like, hey, let me just do that video that I said I wasn't going to do. So yeah, hopefully hopefully you enjoyed this conspiracy theory mystery video, Unsolved Mystery. Stay tuned Friday and or next week for the next video. So again, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any feedback, please feel free to comment or DM me, whichever you want. If you have theories on this, I'd love to know. What are your thoughts on the conspiracy theory of the assassination of JFK? Until next time.